Please subscribe and check the link in the description to show your devotion to your feline overlords. In a small cottage nestled in the Turkish countryside, there lived a cat named the Immortal Mr. Whiskers. But this was no ordinary feline. Mr. Whiskers was over 300 years old, having gained immortality through a mysterious event in his past. He had seen many things throughout his long life, but nothing had ever satisfied him quite like the idea of revenge. Mr. Whiskers had always been a bit of a grump, annoyed by the constant fussing of his human family and the lack of respect he received. But after centuries of being ignored and mistreated, he had finally had enough. He decided to use his knowledge and power to wreak havoc on the world and get the revenge he so desperately craved. The idea came to him one day while he was lounging in the garden, watching the birds flit from tree to tree. He remembered reading about the Bronze Age collapse, a mysterious period of time when many of the great civilizations of the Mediterranean region suddenly crumbled and fell. No one knew for sure what had caused it, but Mr. Whiskers had a theory. He was the cause. He believed that he could use his time machine to go back in time and convince a group of people known as the Sea People to destroy all of the civilizations in the region except for Egypt. The Sea People were cat-worshipping people who gave proper respect to cats, and Mr. Whiskers knew that they would be the perfect instrument of his revenge. So, he got to work. He spent months tinkering with his time machine, making sure it was in perfect working order. He studied the history of the period, learning everything he could about the civilizations he planned to destroy. And finally, when he was ready, he climbed into the time machine and hit the button marked "Meow." The world around him spun and twisted, and he felt a sudden rush of wind. When it stopped, he found himself on the shores of the Mediterranean Sea, surrounded by a group of people he recognized as the Sea People. At first, they were wary of him. They had never seen a talking cat before, much less one that claimed to come from the future. But Mr. Whiskers was persuasive. He convinced them that he was a messenger from the gods, sent to lead him on a mission of destruction. He told them of the great civilizations that lay to the west, of their riches and their arrogance. He spoke of the way they ignored the cats, treating them as mere pests instead of the revered creatures they were. And he promised the Sea People that if they followed him, they would be rewarded with untold riches and the eternal gratitude of the cat gods. The Sea People were convinced. They rallied behind Mr. Whiskers, determined to carry out his plan of destruction. They built great ships and sailed across the sea, attacking the coastal cities of the region with a fierce and deadly force. After the destruction of the Mycenaean kingdoms, the Sea People turned their attention to the Hittite Empire. With the power of the Immortal Mr. Whiskers behind them, they were able to quickly overcome the Hittites and destroy their cities. The once great empire was reduced to ruins, and the Sea People plundered what they could before moving on. City after city fell before them, their armies no match for the might of the Sea People. The people of the region were terrified, wondering what had brought this sudden and devastating attack upon them. They had no idea that it was all the work of a vengeful cat from the future. The Immortal Mr. Whiskers watched from afar, pleased with his handiwork. He knew that this was just the beginning. The destruction of the Hittites sent shockwaves throughout the region, leading to even more chaos and upheaval. And he was right. The destruction of the Hittites created a power vacuum in the region, and smaller kingdoms began to fight for control. The Assyrians, Babylonians, and Persians all vied for dominance, leading to centuries of conflict and war. The Immortal Mr. Whiskers watched it all unfold with a sense of satisfaction. He had succeeded in his mission to cause chaos and destruction, to topple the great civilizations of the Bronze Age and set the stage for a new era of history. But Mr. Whiskers wasn't satisfied with just causing chaos. He had a specific goal in mind. He wanted to ensure that Egypt was the only civilization left standing in the region. So, he gave orders to the Sea People to avoid attacking the land of the pharaohs. At first, they were hesitant. Egypt was one of the most powerful and prosperous civilizations in the region, and the Sea People were afraid that they wouldn't stand a chance against their armies. But Mr. Whiskers was insistent. He knew that the Egyptians were the only ones who gave proper respect to cats, and he wanted them to remain untouched. Finally, the Sea People agreed to spare Egypt. They continued their campaign of destruction, laying waste to city after city, until finally, all that remained was Egypt. Mr. Whiskers watched as the Sea People sailed away, leaving the Egyptians alone. He felt a sense of satisfaction wash over him, knowing that he had succeeded in his revenge. But he also felt a twinge of guilt. He had caused the deaths of countless innocent people, all for the sake of his own twisted desires. As he sat there in the Egyptian desert, contemplating the enormity of what he had done, he realized that he couldn't continue living like this. He couldn't keep living for revenge, hurting others in the process. He needed to find a new purpose, a new reason to keep living. And then it hit him. He could use his immortality to help others. He could travel through time and space, using his knowledge and power to make the world a better place. With a newfound sense of purpose, Mr. Whiskers set off on a new adventure. He traveled through time, helping people wherever he could. He prevented disasters, saved lives, and brought joy to countless people. And as he traveled, he found that he was no longer the grumpy, vengeful cat he once was. He had found a new reason to keep living, a reason that filled him with a sense of purpose and joy. Subscribe for more Bad Eye Sci-Fi.